Welcome to More Than Words, a podcast about treating the whole child brought to you by the Reading and Language Learning Center. I'm your host, Tristen, and today I'm joined by speech language pathologist Jennifer Schmid to discuss the impact of yoga on speech. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited.
Of course, I'm excited for you to be here. I think this is going to be such a fun topic because I don't think people put yoga and speech together. So this is going to be exciting.
Yeah, thank you. I know I'm really excited about it too. I think I don't want to take all the credit for it because I am trained in a program called Talk Yoga, and their system is trademarked. But two speech therapists, Amy Roberts and Kim Hughes, together developed the program. So I take pride in being able to utilize their knowledge in my practice and
Yeah.
share it with the community here. But I also want to make sure that this isn't invented by me in no means. And really the system of yoga from a philosophy standpoint, we all are integrated in it together. But I do like to give from a lineage standpoint recognition where lineage is due.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I can't wait for you to tell us more about you and more about yoga and speech. So let's start with an introduction for you. Tell us who you
Yeah.
are and what you do.
So I am a speech language pathologist. I actually started my career with the Reading and Language Learning Center.
Yes.
Yay! I credit them to a lot of the strengths that I have in understanding literacy development and the speech language influences on literacy. Pride myself in being a really strong speech therapist in the public school setting as a result of them. And I was with them for 2 years from about 2018 to 2020. And then in February, I completed my yoga teacher training. So I graduated from my yoga teacher training in February of 2020. And then, as we know, in March of 2020, that pandemic happened. And I think a lot of us in education are still really feeling the effects of that.
Yeah.
We're 6 years out. um, and so across that period of time through from 2020 through now, I've been actually really applying a lot of the yoga principles into my therapeutic practice even before I was formally trained in the Talk Yoga program. I completed that training in 2020, but I also feel really passionately about both bringing it into practice to support the children and their learning and their growth, and also, I do believe it's it's not either or, and also to support the educator or the practitioner or the clinician or the parent in their regulatory skill sets and in my regulatory skill sets, because really for learning to occur, we all have to be regulated together. And so we might talk a little bit about co-regulation too, as we
Yeah.
talk, but yeah, that's a little bit about me and my practice. You might ask where people can find me online.
Yeah.
I do have a website and it is my name, so it's www.jenschmid.com. But I do want to caveat that a little bit because the focus and emphasis is on more of the subtle body sciences and the kind of the science of consciousness. Because I think in the yoga side of things, I got really, really interested in more of that subtle body science.
Yeah.
So I'll say there's less of the speech language focus on my website, but in our conversation today, I know we're really focused on, the language and learning side of things, which is really exciting because I love both.
Yeah.
Literacy and language are a first career love for me.
Yeah.
And then, the science of consciousness and its artful practice is a second career love for me. So here we
Yeah.
are.
Well, very cool. Yeah, and I'll link your website in the show notes. So if folks are looking to like find you and chat with you, services or anything like that, they can reach you there.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's hop into the questions if you're ready for that.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, great. So, when we're talking about yoga informed approaches in speech therapy, what in the world does that actually mean? And like,
Yeah.
what elements of yoga are the most relevant for the communication and learning, like we were saying?
hmm So when I think about yoga informed approaches, I view it in kind of two camps, kind of two schools of thought, if you will.
Mhm.
And so we could think about it one from the physical movements, and in Sanskrit and yoga, the word for that is asana. So we might have like the physical postures of yoga. That's what I think most people think of when we say yoga, are
Sure.
the physical postures, right? And from like a clinical application, there's a lot of we can talk about the proprioception and like the vestibular system, the balance system. There's
Mhm.
a lot of there's a lot of science that's brought into the physical elements of yoga, which again we can talk about maybe more later. So the first kind of branch of this yoga informed approach is through the lens of that physical piece. But I also think that it's really important to think about yoga from the philosophy side, and that is an informed approach. So being informed about yoga philosophy is offering the informed approach. And
Yeah.
so yoga in Sanskrit actually means union.
Oh,
So really, it's any practice that brings a union to the mind, body, and spirit. Spirit can be open to interpretation, right?
sure.
But that's why I think sometimes the world of yoga and speech therapy can seemingly be not something that we might always put together, right?
Right.
Because there's American Speech Hearing Association. We want to be really evidence informed and
Right.
bringing the science background to it. That's why I think I get really passionate about the science side of these more subtle experiences. But anyways, the philosophy around yoga, so yoga meaning union, that yoga informed approach, I think. Really means bringing awareness back to the body for any kind of learning to happen.
Sure.
And this is supported through newer learning theories like the embodied learning theory. Yeah, I think it's practices, it's the mindfulness practices, it's catching, our thoughts about ourselves when learning feels difficult.
Mm.
That's that mindfulness practice. It's having bodily awareness when, maybe practicing a posture, or when, practicing speech sounds that requires a real amount of body awareness. And so
Mm.
I'm finding more and more that sometimes I'm having to directly teach body awareness for any kind of progress in speech to happen. So yeah, that's I unloaded a lot. I don't know if you have follow-up questions. Um,
I do actually, because this is fun.
oh, please.
So I have seen the therapists here at RLC work with mirrors, right? And so they will kind of
Sure.
like prompt the kids to say, like, this is the shape that your mouth is making, or that your tongue is making, or whatever.
hmm
So, in that way, is that kind of like an opportunity for you to help teach that body awareness? Is that like where you'd bring
hmm
in kind of like yoga principles?
Yeah, 100%. So, yoga movements are more of a gross motor activity, and gross
Right.
motor activities are like whole body movements. Okay. Speech is more of a fine motor movement. We're
Mm.
using more of the smaller, there's just like smaller muscle movements associated with it. So sometimes for those kids with like childhood apraxia of speech, where the
Mhm.
principles of motor learning are imperative for their practice, yes, I'm using mirrors. Yes, I'm drawing their attention to my mouth. I'm also doing gross motor whole body movements to help them integrate it into their body. So, for example, like the W sound is made with rounded lips. So, yes, we're looking in the mirror. We're directly teaching like rounded lips. Some of those young kids might need concept development around what the word round even means.
Right.
So to do that, we might build that through a yoga posture. In the talk yoga program, that will be the waterfall pose. So they their legs are out wide like a W, and then their arms are coming up. You won't be able to see this on a video, but the arms are coming like up and around, and you're making like that rounded body
Oh,
movement of
yeah.
like the whoa. Like with your arms coming up and around as you're also doing the smaller fine motor movements with the mouth, so like waterfall,
Oh,
right?
cool.
Or in the RLC program, I know it's the windy sounds, right? So
Yeah.
your cognitive cueing can be, you can differentiate that cognitive cueing for sure, but building out the movement, I have found just it helps the learning integrate so much faster.
That's really cool. And a side tangent of mine is I I'm a choir kid. I always have been. And like growing up, there would definitely be times when our choir director would be trying to get us to achieve a certain sound, which required a certain feeling in the mouth, like in the soft palate or however,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they would give us something physical to do to kind of help us visualize that and help us kind of like get out of our heads a little bit and just be able to allow our body to do what it needed to do.
Yeah, 100%.
And this
Um,
sounds like kind of similar, which I love.
Yeah, it's so similar. So we have our sometimes our thoughts get in the way of our body, right?
Yeah.
And so any practice that I think helps to dial that back, it can be really supportive to learning because I find our bodies are really intuitive and they tend to kind of know what to do.
Right.
But sometimes the brain might get in the way, admittedly.
Right.
And so then the therapeutic practice becomes, helping the brain to get out of the way or helping to rewire the brain to create the pathways for the body to integrate. So yeah, it is all related.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, kind of to ask you more explicitly about that and add on to it. So,
Mhm.
how does movement, breath, and the body awareness we were talking about support the like foundational skills that children need for speech language and things like attention, regulation, motor planning, all of that?
hmm Yeah, so one of the first things I think of when you say attention, again, to bring it back to yoga, and the Sanskrit word of drishti means gaze. So there's a frequent phrase that I use when teaching yoga, honestly to adults, but I use it with children also, but in different ways. But I'll cue something by saying, where your eyes go, your mind goes. So where your
Mm,
gaze goes, your mind tends to follow. So we can focus our attention by focusing the gaze. Kids with, the different attention needs. Sometimes their gaze is not always where we want.
sure.
And so there's different tricks of the trade and cues that we can use to kind of guide the eyes back to where we want. I might say to the kids, if their language abilities, if they can understand, like, oh, where your eyes goes, your mind goes, like they might understand that. But sometimes I might say, like, you hear the phrase all the time, teachers use like eyes on me, like there's a reason they're saying eyes on me. It's so
Yeah.
that, the attention is redirected. But to be a little bit subtler about it, again, the young kids, if there's preferred toys that they like to play with, you can bring the preferred manipulative or the preferred toy like up to your mouth while saying the sound or saying the word. And that's gonna help them. That's gonna bring their attention and their gaze up to your mouth, which is again required for that speech development. Yeah, because saying "look at me" and look here, eyes on me, that can get a little bit tiring. So if you can find different sneakier ways to redirect that attention, that's great. And if anyone has other ideas, I would genuinely love to hear them because I'm constantly redirecting attention with kids. that is a yoga principle, right? Of like the
Yeah.
drishti and the gaze. I think also about breath too, like breath work, and breath being, we have to have breath coordination for speech. And, there's a lot of breath work in yoga practice that facilitates that regulation that I was talking about at the beginning of this podcast. So, the vagus nerve is responsible for that rest and digest state. And we don't learn when we're really stressed out, like when we're
Right.
in the sympathetic nervous system, like we can't learn. And so that's where sometimes, there's evidence to support like kids with really moderate or significant anxiety needs. Like sometimes that can actually look like a learning disability.
Mm,
Because they're literally cutting themselves off from the cognitive parts of the brain
crazy.
when they are in that sympathetic nervous system state. Like we cannot learn when we are stressed.
Right.
Unfortunately, we live in a world right now where like there's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So I think, being able to co-regulate with the kids is so, so important. We can't teach when we're stressed.
Right.
But as I was talking about the vagus nerve and dropping into that parasympathetic nervous system state, when we double the exhale, it actually helps to bring more calm into the body. Sometimes I will literally have the kids hiss like a snake because you're naturally elongating your exhale. That's naturally bringing that elongated exhale into the system to help kind of regulate, right? And I might do it alongside them. It will be as much for
Yeah.
me to regulate as it is for them. Um, and that's part of that co-regulation. It's all about learning, right? Like some of this is not directly connected to speech. Well, the S sound certainly can be, but it's really about regulation. Another thing that I have done, one of the things that can happen in a school setting as a practitioner is I'm kind of constantly moving from like one session to the next. And they can all, it's very rapid. And
Sure.
then, there's a lot of code switching that happens because I might be running from like a meeting with parents where I'm interacting in a very different way than I might be interacting, with children.
Right.
So anyways, one of the things that I've done for the kids as much as for me, is on the door of my speech room, I have printouts of hands, and it's take 5 to arrive. Because
Ooh.
it's that arrive, like again, it's just like arriving, like it's just taking like 5 seconds to arrive into the next thing that you're doing. And so there are different options. Like the kids can do wall presses. So there's like they can press against the wall 5 times. Again, like research to support that. The other option that they have is to breathe in and then do like a quick exhale, and then like you close your fist and then a quick exhale and you open your palm and you do that
Ooh.
5 times. So in,
Yeah.
out 5 times, breathing in up a finger and then down the finger, like up the
Oh,
thumb, down
yeah.
the thumb, in and down, like in and out. That's another choice they have. Oh, and then tapping. So tapping, the index finger to the thumb,
Yeah.
and then maybe the middle finger to the thumb, and then the ring finger to the thumb, and then the pinky finger to the thumb. And you might pair that with a phrase, cueing the mindfulness piece, like you might say, like, I am ready, or just
Okay.
some like,
Yeah.
I'm ready to learn, like I am ready. And that again kind of regulates everyone
Right.
and gets everyone ready to learn.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I mean, like I said, I feel like there's so much to this, I feel like, right?
there's so much.
And
Yeah.
you said it's more kind of like regulating and co-regulation and getting your brain to coordinate with your body, getting
Hmm.
yourself out of
Hmm.
your head, like all of those things.
Hmm.
So I mean, I think that was great. And I feel like for the most part, the folks that listen to our podcast are parents. And so those are great things for parents to maybe even have like as a routine for when they come home or like you're
Hmm.
about to start homework, like let's take a deep breath, right? And in one of those ways. And I just think that is so interesting and cool. So I think
Thanks.
that was a great answer.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Um, so to build off of that in terms of regulation and communication, I think you mentioned that there's some research that like will tell us about that connection.
Yeah, I know. There's a researcher out of Johns Hopkins. She just completed her PhD, and I attended her discussion at the American Speech Hearing Association uh, recently back in November. And I really wish that I could remember her name to be able to reference it verbally on this podcast, but I will have to give you her name later to
Yes,
perhaps include in the show notes.
absolutely.
But I was in her talk and I remember having just this huge aha moment because um, she was talking about, and I referenced this earlier, but a newer theory called embodied learning theory.
Yeah.
And this is so much about communication. So she brought it into communication and kind of concept development in just really new ways for me. It's things that we find maybe intuitive, but it's just like, I don't know, sometimes you have to hear things over and over, or like someone shares it with you in a new way, and it just like everything clicks.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
was how it felt for me when I was listening to this woman speak. But she was describing, like, so often I'm teaching, like, So, really, I'm interpreting the word communication of this question through the lens of language. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, building language concepts through the embodied learning theory. And really through principles of motor learning as well. But often I'm teaching, concept development embarrassingly. I mean, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. But like sitting at a table, we might be like, I might have cutouts or pictures, and I might have like object, and often I do have object manipulatives, right? Like that's how I'm
Sure.
teaching. That's how I'm teaching concepts like in and on, under, next to. Like I'm using objects, all those things to teach the concept, but we're missing collectively, I think, as a field, the embodiment piece of it to bring it
Yeah.
into, I hate to use the word reality, but like honestly, to like bring it into
Yeah.
reality, like into the
Yeah.
physical form, and like into kind of this horizontal, way of living. So like moving our
Yeah.
bodies,
Right.
and like physically putting your body in a box. Oh, you are in a box, right?
Right.
Physically, I mean, we want to be safe about it, but like maybe physically, like standing on top of like, you're like standing on a chair.
Right.
That's going to be so much more impactful than, like putting a object manipulative that they might or might not care about,
Right.
like on a table. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, and another piece to this too that feels so relevant is that a lot of the times kids on the autism spectrum, their body awareness, it really has to be taught first. Like we have to
Yeah.
almost directly teach body awareness first.
Yeah.
And sometimes like they might need like a physical touch, even
Sure.
just to like bring their awareness to their body.
Right.
There was an instance where I was working with a child on the autism spectrum, and he was really there was a moment of dysregulation, and honestly, all I did was touch his feet, and it just like his whole system calmed down.
Yeah.
Our feet and grounding, and like there's that's also a yoga principle and yoga
Yeah.
practice is in like grounding. There's a word that represents kind of that like grounding, like the downward energy or feeling, like the
Yeah.
downward. And there's also a word for like the upward feeling. And so again, that yoga concept of like balance, like bringing balance into
Mm,
like the grounding and the maybe the rising, right?
right.
And some of these kids on the autism spectrum, like might not have any of that grounding. Like
Right.
they really might need that physical touch, or they need the weighted blanket, or
Right.
there's so much to this. Obviously, I'm really passionate about it.
Oh, well, that was very helpful and very interesting. And I've definitely like heard because I don't directly work with kids on the spectrum, but like a lot of our therapists do. And they definitely talk about how like sometimes like for parents of kids on the spectrum, sometimes it's like, okay, your kid needs a lot of like they need hugs, they need
Input,
compression,
yes.
they need a lot of exactly input. And like that's okay. You just have to learn what your specific kid or student like needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So how would a speech path integrate some of these like yoga based strategies into their therapy sessions while of course like staying focused on the communication goals?
I think there's so many ways. I feel like I've named so many.
Yeah.
Through the lens of like speech sound production, I can give, maybe a little bit of an overview to some of those actualized physical yoga postures, right?
Sure.
So the K and the G sounds, we make those sounds in the back of the throat. And so the yoga postures that are associated with those sounds, you're laying on the floor to use gravity to facilitate the tongue falling back. And so you've got like the koala pose. So you're also crossing your knees or like one leg over the other, which
Nice.
also physically almost creates the letter K. Okay.
Oh my gosh. So you're laying on your back and you cross one leg over the other
Uh-huh.
as if you were crossing your legs like when you're sitting in a chair, but on your
Yep.
back. Okay.
Yep. Yep. And that's koala. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're maybe hugging the knees into your chest, which is also prompting like that whole body movement and the tongue movement of moving the tongue back, right? So
Right.
koala. And again, I can't take credit for this one. This is from Talk Yoga, the trademarked program. Okay. But um, but so you've got koala, and then you've got their training. I'm highly endorsing their training. Like it was another one that was just like it revolutionized my practice. Hawk
Yeah.
yoga. Anyway, you've got gorilla pose, so you're laying on your back again. But this time maybe you're not crossing the legs. You're just kind of hugging in. Or actually they might call that one gopher. I can't remember. Anyway, starts with it's one of those G animals.
G sounds. Okay.
Yeah. And frankly, like again, that's part of the cognitive cueing, but like anything that helps to associate that movement and that sound with a consistent concept, like across whatever program you're using.
Yeah.
So yeah, just food for thought. Like, if you're using, the cognitive cueing of like scraper, a tongue scraper, like you might lay down, and make the same koala shape, but call it something different and just keep
Sure.
consistent cognitive cueing. There's like the tarantula pose. So you're standing up and the kids bend down and tap or touch their toes
Mhm.
for the T sound. And it's
Mm.
tarantula. And then you've got lamb, which is basically downward dog,
Mm,
and
okay.
facilitates the L sound. So, but again, you're asking the kid to lift the leg,
Right.
to also signal that body cueing of like lifting the tongue. So it's whole gross motor movements, facilitating that speech movement also.
Right.
It really is integrated. We're a jack of all trades, if you will. Um, and I have done yoga classes with small groups of kids who also have maybe language processing needs or like intellectual needs,
Sure.
and or they're on the autism spectrum. Like I can do that. There are different support systems. Like there's the visual pictures of each pose. But this is done, like I can do this with all of my students. Like it's used
Yeah.
across the entire population of students that I service. It targets sequencing skills. So you're sequencing different postures. It's following directions. It's problem solving and building awareness. Even fluency, like our stuttering kids, the kids who stutter, that brings in the breath awareness piece again also. So
Yeah.
like the speech breathing pattern, and you can teach the diaphragmatic breathing
Hmm.
um, to again regulate and calm the nervous system. So, gosh, it's really widespread and wide
Yeah.
ranging.
Well, you answered one of my questions, which was like who kind of like who is this for? And
Mhm.
it sounds like it's can be for anyone.
100%.
Love
100%.
that. Love it.
Mhm.
So can you maybe share some ways that like parents at home can use some of these like practices that we have talked about and maybe support their kids outside of therapy at home in like the home setting and maybe like I don't know if it's could be like a whole family thing, something that feels like
Oh.
fun and easy for people to like integrate into their day that doesn't feel necessarily like work or like doing speech therapy again for the kid.
Yeah, gosh, 100%. I know so much of what we ask these kids to do can truly feel that way. In fact, I actually have been thinking about this question a lot, and I want to answer it. I'm gonna not answer it, and then I'm gonna answer
Love it.
it.
Great.
But I do want to talk about I had this aha moment, okay? I honestly got to escape over the winter holiday to someplace really warm. It was so warm.
Ooh,
And I got to scuba dive, admittedly.
yeah. What?
Yeah.
Oh, so cool.
It was so cool. And I had this aha moment because I actually was starting to talk about my profession with somebody on the boat. And there are sometimes instances where it's like, gosh, like I had the language after that interaction to be able to answer, respond to them
Yeah.
in the way that I might have wanted to. Like, there are just things I wish could have said in
Yeah.
that instant. If you know how that goes.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I was scuba diving and I had this aha moment when we talk about neurodiversity and neurodivergence. And it was this aha moment in scuba diving. So I'm out there in the middle of the ocean and I'm looking at just incredibly diverse fish. Like these
Yeah.
fish are so beautiful and they all like some fish they swim in schools and they've got their little like group of fish. Other fish are like more solitary, like they appreciate their solitude, and like the
Right.
whole ecosystem, it's just really diverse and really beautiful. And I was like, gosh, like this is just such a beautiful image of like diversity, right? um and like no fish is trying to be something that they're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and they all just kind of let each other exist in their ways. So okay, so diversity and just like the beauty of the fish. And then divergence is really it's a lot more of like a societal construct, right? Like so
Mm,
we've got like constructs in society, and that term divergence has some subjectivity to it.
sure.
But like strapping some scuba equipment to your back and like jumping into an environment that you're maybe not always meant to be in um,
Right.
is kind of a divergent experience, right?
Sure.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, like scuba diving, and like strapping this equipment to my back, like this is probably what a lot of our students feel like,
Mm,
when they're like in environments that, for whatever reason, like their body systems like are maybe not designed to be in. And so what we're
yeah.
asking them to do literally might feel like breathing underwater. And
Oof.
we have to teach them. Like there are
Yeah.
direct skill sets that require teaching, and sometimes that's work, right? To learn anything new, and sometimes that can also be play. But it was just such a, I don't know, I really wanted to share it because to me it feels so important when talking about this because I'm going to go down a philosophy rabbit hole again here.
Yeah.
Like, take the skill set of reading and writing, for example, okay? For some kids, that might be like strapping on scuba equipment. And if
Yeah.
again, so it's philosophy, right? Like the early days of, Homo sapien development, like honestly, like we were probably communicating through like vocalizations and
Oh
grunts,
yeah.
and it was a more gestural like language system, and like it was a more symbol-based language
Yeah.
system, right? So
Yeah.
to start to communicate using, orthographic reading, like reading and writing skills, that at one point was a divergent experience, right?
Yeah. That's so
Um,
true.
But now, if you have any difficulty developing those skills, now that's seen as divergent, right? Like
Right.
so, I guess like we can really flip the divergent narrative on its head, like depending on what
Yeah.
lens you look through, right? So there's just some subtle nuance between like diversity and divergence that I had an opportunity to get to explain here in a different way. So thank
Yeah.
thank you for giving me the space to do that.
Yeah, that's really cool and I think helpful. Like I understand exactly what you're saying and
Yeah.
it like it felt like a very approachable way for me to gather that like thought.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks. So I didn't really answer your question, but I guess now to think about and answer like tangible strategies for parents at home. Um, I'm having a little bit of a difficulty answering this because I feel like we've talked so much
We have talked a lot.
about just different strategies that can be offered at home. I think I think that's why I wanted to name some of that because I have so much compassion and
Yeah.
empathy for parents like navigating this because for many like they might have to be learning how to swim, scuba dive alongside their child, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you give somebody air to breathe?
Yeah.
Like if you are running low on oxygen, right? So
Exactly.
like I don't know, sometimes it's I just get really like I like to offer, options and I really liked your framing of like okay, how can it be easy? Like thinking and I think that's such a personal like such a personal question like what might feel
Yeah.
easy to one person is going to feel really hard for another. And so I
Yeah.
I sit here with these questions and it's like I don't want to give advice. I like to offer options and I like to
Yeah.
offer modeling. And I feel like I've done that a little bit throughout. So I'm just like
Yeah.
I'm not wanting to give advice here, honestly.
That's fine. That's fine.
Another thing I'd like to offer instead of advice is maybe an invitation for parents. So, when extending this scuba diving metaphor, when after we do a 100-foot dive, we have to take what's called decompression time. There is time that we have to take before we can dive again. And it's for safety. You don't want to experience nitrox toxicity in your body. Like you have to take that decompression time between really deep dives. And so for those of our kids who, we're working together to help them access an environment that might feel a little divergent for their systems, I think for safety, we have to think about giving them opportunity for decompression time. And it's even more beautiful, I think, when parents are able to access that alongside their child, because I think it invites that diversity lens and we get to experience children in their beauty through this
Yeah.
lens of diversity and letting them decompress, letting them take the scuba diving gear off and just existing with them in that and in their diversity and in their beauty.
Sure.
So that felt really important and I really just wanted to add that philosophy to the end here. So, but I with that caveat, like, I obviously really love this and, I do feel happy to be a resource to parents if
Yeah.
people feel, like that would be meaningful. I do feel like, again, like my website has taken like a little bit of a different direction. Again, it's like kind of focused on just different passions of mine, but I obviously love
Sure.
the language and literacy and education side of this too. So there's an open invitation. Just because my website doesn't name that I do these things, if you hear that I'm doing it on this podcast and you need me to be a resource, I'm happy to continue the conversation because I love it.
Love it. Well, perfect. And again, I'll put your stuff in the show notes so that people can do that. They can reach out.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I think that was my last question for you. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, or is there anything you want to share that I didn't give you an opportunity
I feel
to?
like I shared so much. It's feeling kind of complete. I just feel like it's going to be, if I share anything more, people's heads might explode.
We won't do that to them, but this has been wonderful, so informative, and just like a fun conversation about ways that people don't always think of to help their kids regulate and reach their goals in a way that is not intimidating. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
I hope we get more of it. I hope there's practitioners out there listening to it too, that we can kind of, that it's like a movement, you know?
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you for this opportunity. I really loved being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much to the audience for listening. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a little rating and review. It helps other folks find the podcast, and we'll chat with you next time.